Tony, I'm the chillest person on the planet. Welcome to QAV America, Tony, episode 20. Tony's just laughing because I
Chillest
said I don't
person on
have
the.
any
I'm talking
aggression.
to the chillest person on the planet.
I am the chillest person on the planet. You should
Uh-huh.
know that by now. Tony, well, we
Well,
were
you
just
are
talking
very
about this on
calm
our,
until I post pro-democratic things on Facebook.
you're doing your David Markin impression.
Oh yeah. I did notice the
We
decibels
just,
went up a bit when you started talking politics.
yeah. We talked on our Australian show just now about Donald Trump's tariffs being declared illegal by a federal appeals court.
Has that been affected?
So, no, well, no, but he reckons it's going to go to the Supreme Court. But it
Uh-huh.
just fascinates me when governments do things that they know are illegal. I mean, he must have had somebody in it. I know his administration isn't necessarily stacked with the finest and the brightest minds available, but they must have known that, well, we can't really do this, let alone the big card that said these are reciprocal tariffs when they were just made up numbers. But
Oh, I
they
don't
must
know
have
about that,
known that it
Cam.
wasn't legal.
I don't know about that. I think the legal advice was, if you declare an emergency, then you have the power to implement, well, the executive has the power to implement tariffs. And
But the
that's what the
courts
court
are
was
saying
looking at.
no.
Well, the
And the courts are saying
appellate court
no.
was, which means the underlying court said yes, and it'll go to the Supreme Court. And I'd wager
No,
a
the
lot of money
first
that
court said
they'll
no.
say.
The
Well,
first
then why was
court,
it
the first
appealed?
court said it was illegal. The Trump administration appealed the
Oh,
first
I
court's
see.
ruling.
Okay.
And the
Gotcha.
appellate court said no. It was the second time it was declared illegal. So
Pesky
anyway,
judges.
we've talked a lot about how, and I'll talk about it again when I do my pulled pork today, how it's, just throwing everything into disarray. And as it turns out, is illegal in the first place. And the Supreme Court may or may not side with the president, probably will, because they seem to be pretty favourable towards letting him do whatever the hell he wants to do. But if they say no, who knows what happens next. But
Oh, it'll just go through
anyway,
Congress, won't it? Where it should have been in the first place.
I guess.
Hmm.
And he'll probably get Congress to back it. So,
Hmm.
yes, should have been doing that all along. Before I get into my pulled pork for the week, Tony, just do an update on our US portfolio. In the last 30 days, our US portfolio is up 12.5% versus the S&P 500, which is up 3.5%. Year to date, though, our portfolio is down 7.5% versus the S&P that's up nearly 10%. But as I pointed out in our last show, that's because at the end of last year, our portfolio was up, I don't know, crazy amount, like
70?
80%.
80%?
Yeah, 80%. And then at the beginning of this year, when Trump's Liberation Day, etc., happened, a lot of our stocks gave up a lot of the gains that they'd had. All time, though, going back to when we started this portfolio in September 2023, so 2 years ago, it will be in a couple of weeks, our portfolio is up 73% versus the S&P 500 up 45%. So still doing quite well. I also wanted to update you on the performance of the pulled porks that I have done since we started this show.
Uh-huh.
Just because they're not all reflected.
go.
Well, most of them aren't reflected in our portfolio. Of course, the big one being Zepp, the Chinese smartwatch company, which I did on the 11th of July when they were trading at $2.98. They're now trading at $45. They went up 19% today.
Really?
That's crazy. They're
Do you
now
know why?
they're now. Yeah, we talked about this last time. They just signed a bunch of brand deals.
Okay.
Not brand deals, ambassador deals. All
Ambassadors,
these,
yeah.
sporting ambassadors.
19%.
Yeah. Well, that's why they've gone up 1,400% since I
Wow.
first talked about them. I don't know what happened today in particular. But I do have there is a site called, is it FinViz? Yeah, FinViz carries all of the Zepp news. Let me see what happened today. Amaze Fit. Oh, that was August 13th. No, there's been no news in the last couple of weeks. But, all of the news articles from early August were Amaze Fit partners with, which is one of their brands, partners with
Mhm.
female elite trail runners Ruth Croft and Rosa Lara Felu to drive innovation in sports watches. Before that, it was Amazfit announces ultra runner Rod Farvard as new brand ambassador. NFL running back Derrick Henry joins Amazfit as athlete ambassador. So they came out with a bunch of these promotional brand ambassador deals. I assume that's had something to do with it.
Yeah,
They
right.
also came out with their unaudited financial results, which said that revenue was up 46% year on year. So that might have helped.
Yeah.
Anyway, we covered it just at the right time before they blew up. Luck more than skill. But the rest of the stocks are doing okay. Grey Media's up 40% since we did it early August.
Wow. And we looked at Grey
Um,
Media and said, how can this legacy media company go anywhere from where it is?
yeah, right. Titan Machinery that I covered on the 14th of August is up 5% since then. Kimball Electronics from last week is up 1% since we covered it. But
I just,
anyway,
you just blown my mind talking about Grey Media. I mean, it's up 40%. It's not a Mag 7 stock. It doesn't make semiconductors for AI processing.
no.
It's a television network in a dinosaur industry, but it throws off lots of cash.
Yeah, but they're doing a lot of new media stuff. Remember,
I
they're
know.
sort of down in Atlanta and they're getting people in and they're doing cool stuff. They've got ponytails like me, Tony. A lot of guys with ponytails doing,
They're
doing
successful.
cool stuff,
Yeah.
drinking double macchiatos. Yeah, but did you say but successful? Yeah, right.
No, I said
Just
they're
like you, but
successful.
successful. Oh, right.
I did not
Did
say
you
that.
have? You thought it,
Mhm.
but did
No,
you
I
have
didn't.
any other? Did you have any other news that you wanted to talk about US related before I get into my deep dive, Tony?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay. So, unlike some of the dirty businesses I've covered recently, like Sasol, this one, Suzano, SUZ is the ticker, is kind of clean. I say kind of because there might be a little bit of greenwashing going on and how clean they make out they are, but cleaner than oil, I guess. Suzano is
I'd be careful with that comment.
which bit? Cleaner than oil?
Well, I know you're going to talk about this company, and it's a paper manufacturing company, isn't it? Uh,
Yes.
I know
Pulp
that
and paper.
there was a company on the Australian stock market called Guns, which ran the processing mill in Tasmania. And it might be different in that I think Guns got involved in some old growth forest, but they were certainly also milling paper from plantation forest, but it involves a lot of chemicals. It's a very heavy duty plant and it releases a few toxic. I shouldn't make any allegations here. It can release toxins into the water supply, into clean, pristine lakes and rivers. So, yeah, don't know about this company,
Well,
but the industry hasn't always been seen as being green, is my
yeah,
point.
as we get into it, I've got a lot of the criticisms from
Mm.
different environmental agencies or whatever about these guys and what they're doing. So we'll talk about that. But certainly their website, they talk about sustainability a lot. It's all over their website about what a great job that they're doing. Maybe that needs to be tempered a little bit, but we'll get into that later. But it's
And certainly,
interesting,
if they're a
particularly
plantation timber company, they are renewing what they cut down. So that's a good thing. And planting trees. So that's a good thing. So, yeah.
planting trees and then cutting them down. But and they're also only growing on lands that have already been degraded, previously degraded lands or something like that, I
Okay.
think they call it. They're not like chopping down pristine forest, but there are other issues about monocultures, etc., which I'll get into. But they are a Brazil-based forestry company, a developer of products made from eucalyptus forests and eucalyptus pulp and paper in Latin America. Now, as Australians, that's weird, right? Because we think of
Mm.
eucalyptus as an Australian native tree. You and I were just talking in the last show about how weird it is when I went to Nicaragua 10 or 15 years ago to see eucalyptus trees everywhere, and go to San Diego and San Francisco and you see eucalyptus trees. It's always a little bit kind of weird for an Aussie. But they were the first company in the world to produce pulp and paper using 100% eucalyptus fiber on an industrial scale. Their portfolio includes coated and uncoated printing and writing paper, paperboard, tissue paper, market pulp, and fluff pulp. You know your fluff pulp from your market pulp, Tony?
I do not. Tell me about Fluff Pulp.
I'm glad you asked, Tony. Fluff pulp is the kind of pulp that you make sanitary products out of or nappies out of.
Oh.
It's fluffy paper. Special manufacturing process makes it nice and feels nice on your butt, Tony, or anywhere in your nether regions. If you need to put paper on your nether regions, you want your fluff pulp. As
Yeah, don't use the A4.
is how to look at it. No. Don't get your printer paper and wrap it around and expect it to do much. The pulp segment of their business is like 80 to 90% of their revenue. The production and commercialization of eucalyptus pulp for the foreign market, with surplus to go to the domestic market in Brazil. The paper segment is mostly domestic. Apparently paper is big still in Brazil. Their roots go back to 1924 when a Ukrainian immigrant, Leon Pfeffer, opened a small paper business in Brazil. Now, by the way, Brazil has had eucalyptus since the late 19th century. The first seedlings arrived via Uruguay and botanical gardens. And I looked into, well, how does Australia play in eucalyptus paper or pulp? And as it turns out, we don't really. We don't really have big eucalyptus paper or pulp business. We tend to chip eucalyptus and send it offshore for processing.
Oh, right.
We've got a couple of small players in paper here, but nothing large. And apparently it's just because of the small scale of the domestic market here and how much how expensive it is to, move stuff offshore.
Well, we did have one, like I said, the paper mill in Bell Bay in Tasmania, which was controversial.
That was eucalyptus?
Yeah. I think so, yeah. Could have had some old forest in it, but I'm pretty sure it'd be eucalyptus.
Right. So most of it's done out of Latin America and China these days. So in the early 1900s, an agronomist, Edmundo Navarro de Andrade, spearheaded large-scale planting of eucalyptus to meet demand for wood in railway construction. That's why eucalyptus was big over there, because it's fast growth, right?
Yep.
And the climate over there is similar to the climate here. Humid, temperate climate, so it grows quite well.
It's interesting they're using it for sleepers because eucalyptus timber is typically a softwood, like a pine, which if it gets damp will warp. So that was interesting that they were using it as sleepers. Usually, I thought sleepers were ironbark and more. I guess ironbark's a eucalyptus variety, isn't it? Maybe there's some of the harder varieties of eucalyptus we used. Okay.
I cannot answer that, Tony. That's a deep dive I did not go down.
You can tell my father worked in the industry.
Which industry? Railway or eucalyptus?
Forestry.
Oh, I thought he was a farmer.
No. Oh, he's a public servant.
Cattle? Cows?
No, that's Jenny's father.
Oh, right. Okay. Pfeffer. Back to Leon Pfeffer. So he was born in 1902 to a Ukrainian Jewish family in Ukraine. And about 1910, his father was worried about increasing anti-Semitism in Ukraine and immigrated to Brazil, where he worked as a peddler selling stationery items around Sao Paulo from an ox-drawn cart. In 1920, he had enough money to bring his wife and 2 sons and 2 daughters to Brazil. So he was there by himself for 10 years with his little ox-drawn cart before he could bring his family out. The immigrant story. And Leon started his first business manufacturing candles bad timing because Sao Paulo was just getting electricity at the time. So then in 1923, he founded a paper distribution business, purchasing imported and domestic paper for sale to local retailers. So he would have been 21 when he started that business. By chance, a large domestic paper factory suffered a fire, and he was able to purchase a large quantity of paper rolls which were damaged. Don't give me that smile. It was by chance. I know what you're thinking.
Yeah. Okay.
Ukrainian Jewish stocktake. No, it wasn't his company. It was he was able to buy a large quantity of paper rolls that were damaged externally but were okay internally, and enabled him to profit greatly during the Great Depression after Brazil banned imports. Which leads me to a whole story about protectionism in Brazil. I did go down that rabbit hole. So World War II, they introduced high protectionism for a couple of reasons. One was to save foreign reserves for stuff that was really urgent. So they banned imports to hold on to stuff to hold on to foreign currency they might need for oil or medicine and stuff like that. Secondly, to try and build up their local industry, to force, businesses to build up locally and to protect those businesses so they could have more industry in Brazil. They still have very high levels of protectionism in Brazil. And I read an article about it in the Wall Street Journal, back from February, I think. Quotes Maison Ferreira de Nobrega, Brazil's finance minister in the late 1980s and early 1990s. He says, Trump's ideas on how to strengthen US industry are similar to what we thought in Latin America right after World War II. The idea that protectionist tariffs would boost domestic industry, spilling over to services and agriculture and make the country rich. Well, it didn't work, he says. Yes.
Does he say why?
No, he did, but I didn't write it all down here. But yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of reasons, but it's the classic problem with protectionism. One of the stories is that the industry in Brazil hasn't had to become efficient because they have
petrified
locked in guarantees of markets. So it's like government owned businesses and quangos that we've seen in the past. So yes, a lot of problems, Brazil, and the Brazilian economy has a lot of problems too, but I'll get more into that later on. Back to Leon. He expanded by purchasing a printing press, established a retail store, built an envelope factory, which became one of the largest in the country. In 1939, he sold everything,
bet it was
including... You would hope so. It burnt down, fell into the swamp. So I built it again. One day, lad, all this will be yours. What, the curtains? Not the curtains, lad. Sorry. Sorry for Americans who've never seen Monty Python film before. In 1939, he sold everything, including his house, his wife's jewelry, and his store, and built a paper factory in Sao Paulo, and used imported pine pulp to produce its paper. Apparently, he could import pine pulp at that stage. His son Max was studying at the Juilliard School of Music at the time, helped him find a local substitute for pine fiber. He was working with biologists at the University of Florida, Max was, and they worked out that eucalyptus pulp was going to be a good substitute. So in 1946, Leon purchased Industria de Papel Euclides Damiani, and somehow that involved mixing eucalyptus fiber into its production. 1956, renamed the company Suzano Papel e Cellulose. 1960, bought another paper mill, and then by 1961, they were 100% eucalyptus as raw material. Leon died in 1999, aged 96. And the Pfeffer family still controls Suzano today. David Pfeffer, one of Leon's grandsons, is the CEO. The company is listed on the Novo Mercado in Brazil and on the New York Stock Exchange, and the family owns about 49% of the stock on the Novo Mercado anyway. So, very much family-owned and run business 100 years later. They are now the world's largest producer of eucalyptus pulp and supply raw fiber for paper, tissue, and packaging worldwide, run 8 industrial plants across Brazil, sell to over 80 countries. And as I said before, pulp is about 80-90% of revenue. 2018, they merged with one of their biggest rivals, Fibria Cellulose, and created a pulp behemoth with 10.8 million tons of pulp produced annually, roughly 17% of global market pulp supply. It was a $14 billion deal that vaulted Suzano to the #1 global pulp spot. Don't know if you've ever been. I mean, if you've never been to the global #1 global pulp spot, Tony, you haven't lived. You got to go to the global pulp spot. All the kids are talking about it. They love it. Brazil has a pretty turbulent economy, though. Political scandals, recession, external shock, inflation, unemployment surges from time to time, although they've got pretty low unemployment at the moment. It's around about 5.8%, which I think is a record low. But Suzano has been able to sort of navigate these crises from hyperinflation to commodity slumps by focusing on efficiency and scale. They just marked their 100th anniversary in 2024, and they are doing well despite the fact that pulp is in a bit of a slump at the moment. And that's one of the caveats on this, is I only discovered getting into it that there is a pulp commodity index, not one that we track in our normal indexes, but it's currently a Josephine for us. It's been in a decline for the last couple of years, year and a half, 2 years. So we wouldn't actually buy this today if it was us, because we'd wait for the commodity price to turn around. And it looks like it's bottoming out. It does sort of go through cyclical phases, but there are some issues like tariffs at the moment that I'll get into that may have an impact. But it is an export-heavy business. They sell into Asia, Europe, and North America, and the uncertainty around the tariffs, both in terms of North American tariffs or the US tariffs and China, and the issues with China and tariffs and the impact on China's economy, are having an impact on the paper business and the pulp business as well, because it's a big market for them. So that aside, these guys are a cash machine. Oh, by the way, if you're looking at this in Stockopedia, which is where we get our fundamental data from, they do report in the Brazilian real, R, not USD. So I had to twiddle the numbers in our spreadsheet, and a couple of things changed, but it still came out with very good numbers even after I twiddled the figures to accommodate the real. They're a cash flow engine, though, which we like. We like businesses that generate a lot of cash, and these guys generate a ton of cash. Give you an example. Last year, the company generated about 16.2 billion real in cash, which is about $3 billion US dollars. Its market cap is about 12 billion US dollars. So about 25% of its market cap it generates in cash every year. That's a crazy amount of cash.
That's incredible.
Yes. So it's got a very low prop cap, which I'll get into later on. And this is mostly because it's one of the world's lowest cost pulp mills. They've just got they spend a lot of money on R&D and innovation. And I don't know, if you're like me, you think you grow trees, you cut them down, you turn them into paper, how much innovation can there be? It turns out they do a lot in terms of trying to drive down cost. And they've had a big focus on economies of scale, of course, too. They're very large, so they can do good deals with suppliers, good deals with their ability to get into the markets. But also there's a lot of innovation in terms of getting their unit costs down. The cash cost per ton of pulp for them is about 828 real per ton of pulp, which is about $150 US per ton, which is very cheap. in terms of global pulp prices. But as I said, pulp prices are down. I read some analysis. There's a company called Coface that did a really good analysis on this. I won't bore you with all of the details, but basically says demand is down. China's about 30% of the market. Tariffs are throwing a lot of uncertainty in the mix. So it's the kraft pulp, if you want to look it up, bleached eucalyptus kraft pulp. Kraft with a K. BEK is the code for this is a commodity. And it's a Josephine, as I said. It was up as high. This is in Chinese yen, CNY. It was CNY. What's that? CNY, Chinese yuan, not yen, yuan. You know, I have my yen and my yuan around. Never get your yen and yuan mixed up. Yeah. It was at the end of 2023, it was up around 7,500 CNY per tonne. It's now down to about 4,900 something.
That's a big drop.
It's come back a lot. I mean, it's been up and down since then. And, 2024, early 2025, it was up over 6,000. It's dropped back down. But 2022 was up around 7,500, dropped down to where it is today at the end of 22, back up in 2023 to 7,500, then back down at the beginning of 2021, 2022, back down in 2024. So has lots of peaks and troughs when you look at it. It's very cyclical for some reason. But even with pulp prices in the downturn over the last year or so, these guys are still generating a lot of money. They recently took an accounting loss, but that was mostly due to currency swings on the US dollar debt. So with that big acquisition they did 5 or 6 years ago, they took on a lot of debt. They've done a lot of acquisitions, but that was the biggest one, the merger. They've taken a lot of debt. They carry a heavy debt load, over $10 billion from a variety of acquisitions and expansion projects. But they manage it well, and they've been deleveraging. Their net debt to EBITDA is down to 2.9 times. They score well on Petrovsky F score. I'll get into that shortly. So, yes, they're carrying a lot of debt, but their cash flow is solid. Free cash flow is about 20% of yield. So they're, again, just generating a ton of cash because of their way that they operate. Part of this is eucalyptus, by the way, apparently, because the plantations mature in 7 years versus 20 years for pines in colder climates. So they're yielding more fiber per acre faster, gives them a structural material advantage. What else can I tell you? Its newest mill came online in 2024. It's called the Cerrado project. It's already smashing performance records, ramping up to full capacity in under 6 months. Expansion drove their sales up 7% last year, despite it being a down market. And what else? That's about it. They're just a very well-run business. Now, I did talk about the state of the Brazilian economy. That's one of the reasons why it might be cheap, apart from the fact that pulp prices are down. Brazil risk, it trades at emerging market valuations. People see a lot of sovereign risk going on in Brazil, a lot of currency volatility, political uncertainty. But the counter argument is the Pfeffer family is pretty powerful and they have a lot of control. And they tend to provide a lot of stability, which also means that minority shareholders have less say in things, but we like a lot of skin in the game from founders, and these guys definitely have that. Then there's the ESG overhang. As I mentioned before, if you go to their website, it's just sustainability everywhere. It's obviously a big focus of what they're trying to push. But when you drill down and look at some of the criticisms of it, they get quite a lot of criticism from environmental groups for things like their huge farms are monocultures, which aren't great for biodiversity. If you just have one crop everywhere,
Oh,
it
okay.
tends to
Yep.
be bad for the environment. And it's not a native species either. It's an
Hmm.
imported species. They're also linked to water scarcity, their plantations, ecosystem drying, heightened fire risk, low job density, because apparently once you have these things, it doesn't take a lot of people to just watch a tree grow for 7 years. And they're accused of greenwashing a lot too, making themselves look like a good ESG stock when really, if you drill down into it, maybe they're not so much, allegedly. But so, yeah, they could get a big whack from an ESG perspective if a story or bad PR comes out about something
Hmm.
involving how they're running things. But that is probably one of the reasons why it's discounted. So a combination of reasons: Brazil, sovereign risk, ESG risk, pulps down, tariffs, uncertainty in the market, all those sorts of things. Flip side to that is near-term catalysts could be if pulp prices turn around, which they often do. It's cyclical, as I said before. But also, they've just announced a couple of really big deals. A $3.4 billion joint venture with Kimberly-Clark to create a global tissue products company. They've got a 51 stake, Suzano do, in this joint venture. Basically, they're taking over Kleenex's or Kimberly-Clark's international tissue assets. 22 tissue mills worldwide producing brands like Kleenex across 70 countries. Involves 99,000 employees marketing and selling regional brands including Kleenex, Scott, and Wipe-All in over 70 countries. So this is them moving down the food chain or up the food chain,
Mm.
depending on how you want to look at it,
Hmm.
getting a bigger chunk of the profits in finished products. At the moment, as I said, 80 to 90% of their sales is pulp, 10% is domestic paper products, and they call graphic paper. So paper that's used for offices, for printing, for newspapers, are all in decline because of digitalization and people using less and less paper on that front. I remember when we used to go through here at home, a thing of printer paper once a month, and now we go through maybe one a year. We just never print stuff off these days. So that's in decline, but there's a lot of higher margin consumer tissue, sanitary products, toilet paper, tissue paper, all of that kind of stuff that they're going to get a chunk of that with this joint venture with Kimberly-Clark. So that's big. Also, last year, 2024, they acquired 2 paperboard mills in the US, which is going to get them into packaging in a bigger way in the North American market. So more margin upstream in that as well. So potentially a lot of upside for them in the future
Mm.
if they can execute well on these things. Sort of takes them out of relying on pulp cycles and might earn them a higher valuation multiple as they get more and more involved in integrated value-added businesses. On top of that, they're doing massive share buybacks, which you love, and
I do.
dividends. So they're doing both share buybacks and dividends. They paid out 1.5 billion real in 2024 and bought back 2.8 billion real in stock. So from an investor's perspective, best of both worlds, buying back stock and giving cash out as
Mm.
dividends,
Wow.
keeping everybody happy, keeping Warren happy and keeping people looking for dividends happy. So there's risks. There's also upsides. Just to go through the numbers, average daily trade is 17.5 million, so pretty big. The price to operating cash flow is 3.23.
Mm.
So very, very low. We explain this every week, but just for new listeners, one of the key metrics that we look at, price to operating cash flow, basically how long would it take the business to pay you back from operating cash flow? And this is a little over 3 years. So it's a very short payback cycle, which means low risk. We like that. On Stockopedia, they have a quality rank of 70, which we like. We score anything over 60, so we gave them a score for that. Don't score them on stock rank, though. Their stock rank is 84. We only score over 90. But we do score them on their F score. They got an F score of 7, I think, from memory.
Yes.
So we score anything over 4.5. So that's basically a measure of financial health. We did score them for that. Their price was not below our IV number 1 when I redid the numbers, but it is below our IV number 2, so I scored them for that. Price is not less than book or book plus 30, so I didn't score them for those, but they do have a new 3-point upturn, so I scored them for that. Book value growth is positive. PE is not less than the yield. Yield is not greater than bank debt. The forecast IV is greater than twice the current price, just by a margin. But they got a score for that after I rejigged the numbers. So all in all, they got a score of 10 out of 14 or 71% and a QAV score of 0.22. So pretty good score from me, although the caveat, as I said before, is that the pulp prices are Josephine, so we don't have any spare capacity in our portfolio, so I'm not looking to buy them. But even if I were, I would wait until the pulp price became a 3-point buy, I guess. Keep an eye on it.
Very interesting company and another industry to explore, which is great. And heaps of cash. Heaps of cash.
Heaps of cash.
Founding family still, big shareholder.
Yeah.
And
the paper business, I mean, while the printer paper thing is obviously gone, AI is not going to replace tissues and toilet paper and sanitary napkins and nappies. So I think that's a good business for them to get an increasing chunk of, both in terms of supplying the raw pulp and also moving into the end products. Don't know how it'll affect their relationships with their customers they sell pulp to if they're moving more and more into the finished products business themselves. But that's for them to navigate. I'm sure they will do their best to navigate those waters. Anyway, there you go. Different, yet again, very, very interesting business, isn't it? Generating a ton of cash, but not getting a lot of love from the market.
Yeah. And with a few reasons for that. It's based in Brazil, which can have sovereign risk. It's got tariffs to navigate through at the moment. The commodity price is still going down, so it's kind of like it's a big driver of its margin, I would have thought. So, yeah. But time to buy. When that sort of commodity price starts to turn up again, good time to buy.
Yeah, I like it as a business. All right, Tony, I'll insert after hours in there.
Thank you.
Have a great week.
Yep. Happy Nissi.
Follow us on TikTok. Look up QAV on TikTok and follow us on TikTok if you want daily updates.
Wasn't TikTok going to be sold at some stage?
Yeah, Trump sorted that out.
Lucky
He's
for us.
He's probably saying, give me 10%, give me 10% and you can stay. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
And don't allow videos of the strange marks on my hand and we're all good. Stop spreading rumors that I'm dead. It's fake news. All right. Have a good week.
All right. You too.